All right, so part 2 of the notes. Our last 2 compromises that we talked about discussed the southern states and slavery. So this goes into just a little more detail. So your next heading is the issue of slavery. Disputes or arguments over slavery during the convention happened because slavery was far more common in the agricultural South than in the more industrialized North. There is a however, though. So if you look at this map to the side, it talks about the slave population. So you can see that Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia had greater than 10% slave population, and New York, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, all of the green states had less than 10% slave population. So there were slaves in the North, just a much smaller numbers, comparing Pennsylvania at 1% to Virginia's 39%. Maryland wasn't considered part of the North at that time. Maryland and Delaware are noticed that they are orange. They were agricultural and they had slaves. So one thing to know is that slavery was legal in every state except Massachusetts. So Massachusetts was the only state that it was illegal. That's why you notice over here Massachusetts has 0% slavery rates. New Hampshire, its neighboring state here, had 0.1% slavery rate. So the northern states had way less slavery than the southern states. And that's why there were so many disputes in this convention about the agricultural exports and the slave trade. So the next heading is a bundle of compromises, because that is what the Constitution became known as. It became known as a bundle of compromises because that's what the Constitution was. All these plans came together, all of these delegates from every state came together and just made a bunch of compromises to create what we have now as the Constitution. So some of these compromises are the exact structure of this new government, the regional differences among the states, the method of choosing the president, how to amend the Constitution. Remember, amend equals change. So they had to set up a way that they knew that changes would need to be made in the future because they were changing the Articles of Confederation. They were making amendments already back then, so they knew changes would probably need to be made in the future. So they put that into the Constitution, the way you could make changes to it if needed in the future. It also put the limits on the federal power. So it put limits on how much power the federal government can actually have. The Constitution that they approved, the reason it says they is because the Constitution has changed since 1787. There have been many amendments to the Constitution since then. So the Constitution they approved on September 17th, 1787 has been called a bundle of compromises because of all the compromises they made in order to get it finalized and everyone to agree. And that is the end of your notes for part 2. You'll need to type them, write them, upload a picture, or upload a Word or Google Doc to receive credit.